This is the COMPS. The purpose of this assessment is to screen for the presence or absence of motor problems that involve a postural component. It typically takes 15 to 20 minutes to complete and is made for 5 to 15 years old. The type of assessment is standardized screening, and there is no norms. Okay, so I'm going to show you what I want you to do for the first sub-test. Your arms are going to start in like this, and you're going to slowly move out as slowly as you can, all the way out. Your elbow should be all the way extended, and then slowly move back in.
Okay.
Okay, now you try it. When scoring this section, we will look both at the inward and outward movement. The three qualities being measured are symmetry, quality of performance, and speed. The client will receive either a 2, 1, or 0 based on where they fall on the scale shown here. Here you can see how we scored this section of the assessment. Okay, so I'm going to time you for 10 seconds and count how many rotations you make. Ready? Begin. Okay, now you're going to do the same thing, but with both hands at the same time. And ready? Begin. When scoring this section, the right arm, left arm, and both arms will be scored separately. In order to get a 4, the client would have done more than 9 rotations in 10 seconds. To get a 3, they would have done 4 to 8 rotations. To get a 2, they would only be able to do 1 to 3 rotations. And lastly, they would get a 0 if they were unable to complete the task. Here we recorded the number of rotations made on the 3 trials, and then we scored based on the chart. Okay, the third subtest is the finger nose touching, so I'm going to hold out my left arm all the way extended and touch the index finger with my right hand, and then bring it up and touch my nose. And then we're going to do it with our eyes closed. If you want to try, you can do it 3 times. Perfect. Okay, so I'm going to give you 10 seconds in that rotation. Okay, with your eyes open. Ready, go. Okay, and then we're going to do 10 seconds again with your eyes closed. Go. There are 4 sub-trials to this sub-test. 2 of them with the right arm moving, 1 with the eyes closed, 1 with eyes open, and 2 with the left arm moving, 1 with eyes open and 1 with eyes closed. Each trial will be scored separately for this section. When looking at each trial, the 4 measurements that are scored are how the moving arm moved, how the extended arm stayed extended, how the light touch was, and how accurate the contact was. Here's an example of how this section should be scored in the testing booklet. Okay, our next one is perm extension. So we are going to lie down on the mat like I am and get in a superhero position with everything off the mat. And you're gonna hold it for as long as you can. Okay, so you can practice for 5 seconds. Perfect, just make sure everything is off the mat, and that looks good. We can take a little break, and I'm gonna hold the stopwatch right in front of you, and you can count with it as you go. Ready? Go.
1, 2, 3. For scoring, time begins when the child's head and legs are raised and discontinues when the child no longer maintains the position demonstrated by touching the mat with their head, hands, arms, feet, or knees. And to measure whether the thighs are raised off the mat, the examiner may slide a piece of paper between the mat and the thighs. To score for category F, it is based on the performance throughout the first 15 seconds of maintaining the position, and the subject must attain a score of 2 on categories B to E to score a 1 or a 2 on category F. If the child receives a 0 for duration, then the child receives a 0 on the quality categories, which are A through F. Individual in the video scored a total of 12 out of 12, a quality score of 3 out of 3, and a duration score of 3 out of 3.
Okay, so we're now going to do the AT&R test. So I'm going to have you on your hands and knees with your shoulder or elbows slightly bent and your fingers forward and down. Perfect. We have these measurement tools where the axis is right on the elbow joint where she would bend. Try not to lock your elbows. And I'm going to turn your head and keep your elbows straight. Okay. Right.
The sequence is right, left, left, right, right, left, left, right. The scoring is based on the degree to which the elbow is flexed. If the degree of flexion is questionable, then you should assume the higher score. And the left arm scores are for the head turning to the right and vice versa. The individual in the video scored a total of 12 out of 12.
Okay, so last we're going to do supine flexion. You're going to lay down on the mat with your feet up, ankles crossed, and hands over your chest. And you're going to bring your head to your knees like a super ball and hold it for as long as you can. Okay, now can I see you try? Okay, perfect. Now we can rest. And I'm going to hold the stopwatch right above so you can read it and count out as we're holding this position. Okay, ready? Go. 1, 2, 3, 4.
For scoring, the time begins when the child's head and feet are raised, and it discontinues when the child no longer maintains the position, demonstrated by touching the mat with their head, elbows, arms, feet, or neck. The score for category F is based on the performance through the first 15 seconds of maintaining the position, and the subject must attain a score of 2 on categories B to E to score a 1 or 2 on category F. If the child receives a 0 for duration, then the child receives a score of 0 on quality categories, which are categories A through F. The individual in the video scored a total of 11 out of 12, the quality score was a 3 out of 3, and the duration score was also a 3 out of 3.
When finding the end totals, you will add up all of the scores that you got shown in the previous clips. You will then put these on the front page and use the scores to find weighted scores in the charts that are sorted by age in the appendix. Add these weighted scores together and subtract the adjustment to get a weighted total score. If this number is greater than 0, function is considered normal. If the score is less than 0, there are likely problems with motor and postural skills. Here is the chart that we used for a 10-year-old to calculate the final weighted scores. At the bottom, it will tell you the adjustment score that needs to be subtracted from your totals.
For the test-retest reliability, it exceeded 0.75, and for the inter-rater reliability, it was above 0.75, and then the internal consistency was at 0.77, which is considered moderate, but it is at an acceptable level. For the construct validity, children diagnosed with DCD scored significantly different than children without DCD. The distribution of scores was bimodal, so that means that there was no in-between group, and the bimodal was scored within normal limits, so older children or adolescents have developed mature motor skills, and then the other group was those who scored in the very low range, and that is where the child has clearly not developed the skills measured in the COMPS. Sensitivity and sensibility was also discussed within our manual. The sensitivity, which is the test ability to detect dysfunction when it is actually present, was 100% for 5-year-olds and 8 to 9-year-olds, and then it was 82% for 6 and 7-year-olds. Then the specificity, which is the extent to which the test identifies non-dysfunctional children as such, ranged from 63 to 90%. Some potential biases of the COMPS was race and culture were not discussed within the studies that we looked at, and they were not discussed within the manual. Boys versus girls, there is no differentiation in scoring between boys and girls, rather it's solely based on age. And then for statistical evidence, the reliability, validity, sensibility, and specificity of this test was found within the manual. However, it's from an article that utilizes 7th subtest, so the values may be a little skewed.
The article that we found looked at electroencephalography in children with and without sensory processing disorders during auditory perception. The COMPS was utilized as the second behavioral assessment, and it was found that children with sensory processing disorders scored significantly lower than typically developing children. The EPG results were compared to the results of the COMPS to see if the children with sensory processing disorder had differences in brain processing compared to typically developing children.